on to the main story of the day, which is the attempted assassination of Donald Trump during the weekend at a rally in Pennsylvania. Now, for those of you who don't know, been under a rock this weekend or been just watching the football, a lone gunman with an assault rifle managed to clip Trump's ear while he was at the podium. There's a picture of it there with his blood across his face. He was saved because he happened to turn his head at just that split second when the bullet was fired. Already, Republicans in the US are calling for charges of incitement to be laid at Joe Biden's door because Biden said to his campaign a little while ago, apparently it's time to put Trump in the bullseye. Not great. But we've also seen on the Republican side lots and lots of talk about, lots of combat, basically. Marjorie Taylor Greene, who's not your ideal Republican, I've got to admit, but she's been putting out social media videos talking about blowing away the Democrats. She shot at a car with socialism on it and blew up, and then auctioned the rifle for contributions. Now, both sides have accused the other of being a threat to America's safety and sense of self, and that seems to be how they're all trying to get elected, is that the other guy is literally going to destroy your country. It's the start of the Republican National Congress in Milwaukee today, where Trump is expected to make his first public appearance, having gone golfing yesterday, of course. Do you think, Dave, and I think this may even be a stupid question on my part, is Trump going to dial up that aggression, or is he going to tone it down, having literally just been shot at?
I mean, one would hope that he would dial it down, but obviously this being Donald Trump, I mean, you'd expect, sort of he's always presented himself as the candidate that sort of the establishment won't let you have. He's the president that, there will always be an obstacle. And in this case, he, sort of unlike the previous cases where he's been through the, sort of certainly his legal troubles, certainly in this case, he has a legitimate right to be angry. He should be able to give a speech and not, sort of face that level of violence. And he will be very angry about it. And Donald Trump, when he's angry, is often
angry afterwards, isn't he?
Absolutely, yeah. And he's,
he'd be quite cross.
Yeah, I mean, he will understandably, as will his supporters, and I think, as will one would hope, sort of his Democrat opponents as well. I mean, this absolutely shouldn't be the sort of thing that should be happening in public life now. I mean, we saw historically, sort of there's been an awful lot of this in the past. And to, in 2024, to have a candidate who at this stage is possibly sort of slightly ahead in the presidential race, facing that, facing that kind of violence, facing that kind of threat, and not knowing if this is going to repeat itself. I mean, Trump will absolutely dial this up. He's, sort of he's tapped into this, sort of the whole world is against me type mentality. And, we can absolutely expect him to dial this up. I mean, he certainly, I would imagine, won't be presented as a kind of, this was a lone gunman who was, sort of who was acting alone. I mean, this will certainly be part of an, sort of his opponents trying to bring him down.
Yeah.
And that will take us to a good place.
No, it's going to be, there is probably an increase in aggression, one would have thought. And what do you think, everybody? Do you see this stuff over the weekend? What do you feel about the attempted assassination of Donald Trump? Do you think that was in any way justified, or do you think that it must be something that can be condemned? Leslie says, have we forgotten the Capitol riots and who was behind them? This is the thing. There has been an awful lot of talk on both sides over the great deal of violence. And I think, the defining image of that election is going to be that shot we saw on the second page, that photograph of a bloodied Trump with his fist in the air and the US flag billowing behind him as the Secret Service rushed to protect him. And it's got to be said, he showed great presence of mind, I think, when that happened, because they had him all down on the ground or covering him, and they were trying to hustle him off the stage like in a big, armadillo of Secret Service agents. And he pushed his way through to shove his fist in the air and say, fight, fight, to his supporters, presumably thinking that obviously if he got rushed off the stage, that's going to look bad or not look as good as it could do if he invigorated his crowd. And they did. They got, having been really frightened and flat on the face on the ground, they then all jumped up to their feet and going, USA, USA. There's a big risk here, isn't there? Considering that this president praised the Proud Boys, played down white supremacist violence, as Leslie says there, incited a riot at the Capitol when he got voted out, his supporters might seek retribution somehow. And we've got Nigel Farage in this country, who's a mate of Donald Trump's, blaming liberal elite and saying that this is because liberals create an awful, nasty rhetoric. You've got awful, nasty rhetoric on the other side as well. And America's just going to go to a dark place, isn't it now? I think.
Yeah, I mean, that's the, there's a very real danger of it. Like we say, I mean, Trump's supporters are, historically, they're very sort of pro-gun, sort of pro. We saw during the Black Lives Matter movement back in 2020 the sort of level of anger and aggression that sort of protest was met with. I mean, this could take us to a very dark place. Hopefully it won't. But yeah, I mean, this will show, I think we'll learn an awful lot more about Trump, about Biden in the coming weeks and the people around them in terms of what they do to dial this down, if they do anything.
It does seem to be, I mean, US president is one of the most dangerous jobs you can do in that country. They do tend to get assassinated. And Republicans and the gun lobby have been waving guns around and talking about their political opponents for a hell of a long time. Okay, it's not just, Joe Biden saying this thing about a bullseye, which is inconvenient. The Republicans have been this a long, long time. Now, Canty says, can Donald Trump be beaten if the Democrats get rid of Joe Biden? It looks like this is going to probably energize the race, you would have thought. Trump was narrowly ahead overall in the polls, but they're both sort of in the mid-40s, roughly. He was more ahead in the swing states that he needed to win. Joe Biden said, I'm not going to step down unless someone can prove to me I cannot possibly win. We may be getting near that point now, because the American people will be choosing between a very frail old guy who looks like he's got memory problems and someone who's literally just survived being shot at. If you're just weighing it up on health alone and how it looks and how it feels, Trump's going to win it, one would have thought, on this. Just it's worked for Trump. Will perhaps, I mean, if it does, the polls do have some kind of surge. Do you think it may make Biden stand aside for someone else?
I think the difficult thing with this, Well, I think the difficult thing with this now is it leaves them very little time for a new candidate to set in. I mean, you would hope that, this is really a decision that should have been made some time ago. You would absolutely hope that there could be some kind of Democrat resurgence. I mean, it's difficult now. I mean, the path to power for Biden, people within his own camp, very senior Democrats are saying, you need to step down. This will not, this will not end well for us. You imagine where he is now, add another 5 years to that by the end of his presidency. I mean, people are very legitimately worried about that. Having referred to Zelensky as Putin last week, I mean, you cannot make a worse error than that on the world stage. It's, and this is where the debate's going to be at, unfortunately. And you compare that then with that very iconic picture that we saw of Trump over the weekend, where he looks the face of defiance under fire. He, so when you put those two in contrast, I think that a lot of Americans will be thinking, well, which one is likely to be the most, the most capable of doing this job? I mean, whether people would expect Biden to be able to do a full term. And then you wonder what what you're getting next. If they replaced him now, that would obviously be, in many people's eyes, the right thing to do. But also, they've left it so late to establish the candidate as a force. They've not been through the primaries and all the process that we had when Obama and people like that came through.
Yeah, Biden hasn't had an obvious successor, has he? He hasn't groomed anybody. There hasn't been anyone who's sort of come forward and is something that the American people have been able to get to know. Now, Steve says the next polls will be interesting, as we've seen there's footage of people sort of signing memorial boards and so on, get well soon boards for Trump. And for a lot of people, especially perhaps undecided voters, this isn't so much an attack on one guy, the other guy. It's an attack on America. It's an attack on their country and the way they have of doing things. And it's been very interesting hearing some of the commentary coming out of the States, because there's a lot of people talking about how God has saved their guy. And we don't perhaps appreciate it so much in this country. We don't do God in politics, do we? But in America, it really matters, that evangelical religious attitude that perhaps he's been chosen in some way. And we haven't seen those next polls yet, but it does look like it's going to be a bit more positive. But you've got this huge, far bigger inequalities I think we even have in this country, haven't they? They've got, the middle of America is really forgotten and really quite poor, whereas the coasts are richer, and that seems to be sort of, discussed as the liberal elite. They tend to vote Democrat. The middle bit tends to vote Republican. Outside the cities, inside the cities are just very, very different. And it's, Trump didn't really change any of that when he was president, but that's not going to be the thing they are weighing up when they make their vote.
This is the real mystery from people looking on the other side of the world, seeing how the Trump presidency unfolded and how he's sort of put himself in a position where he's become the front runner again, because there seems to be no ideological thread in terms of what Trumpism actually is. I mean, he, sort of is very much the, sort of power of personality. But he's, in terms of asking people, I mean, you get his followers who are absolutely devoted, who say that he's fighting for them, etc. But then if you were to look at real tangible results that he has produced for them, I mean, certainly there's a mystery there in terms of the economic performance and so forth. In the first term of his presidency, he didn't deliver what many of his supporters may have expected, and yet he still finds himself the front runner again on the world stage. He certainly didn't make the world any safer or, sort of tried to essentially sort of withdraw America from parts of the world.
No.
These are very... Yeah, and the problem is
go the whole way. So
no, and we still don't know what a second Trump term would look like. I mean, certainly we feel now he's going to be angrier than he was in the first term.
Yeah,
we know the ego hasn't gone away, and it's for the rest of the world looking on, this is a really worrying time.
Yeah, I thought so. Dawn says if Trump wins, then it will change the face of the world. It's disastrous. Putin would win in Ukraine, and North Korea would gain status. Foolish, short-sighted Americans. I think they're just looking at different stuff to us, Dawn. Unfortunately, but being on the other side of the Atlantic does perhaps give us a bit more perspective. But we'll have to see how it all pans out. But I would suspect, Dave, that the whole presidents can only serve 2 terms according to the U.S. Constitution would get torn up pretty rapidly.
Well, you'd imagine so.
About changing that, didn't he?
Yeah, I mean, you'd imagine so. I mean, the alarming thing is, I mean, if Trump were to do this, which is entirely a Trumpian thing to do, I mean, you'd expect him to, sort of, he views himself as a history maker. He views himself, sort of as a, sort of constantly fighting a popularity contest. If he gets the opportunity to do a third term, he will entirely take it. Although by that stage, he would be 83 the next time America goes to the polls, and that would take him through to, then the third term would take him through to the age of 88. I mean, these are, really alarming times, but I'd entirely suspect this would happen.
Yeah. JC says need to stop doing live crowds. It would have thought perhaps that live rounds might also be the issue, JC. Now, the gunman is called Thomas Crooks. He's only 20 years old. And let's just say this guy is not the establishment. All right. Anybody want to tell you that the liberal establishment somehow executed Donald Trump? This isn't him. He's called Thomas Crooks. He's 20. People who went to school with him say that he just sat alone every lunchtime. He had no friends. He was relentlessly bullied. He worked in a care home kitchen. It was just this stereotypical loner, a complete loner his whole life. He apparently stole his father's rifle, which had been legally bought. This guy is not operating on the orders of George Clooney, all right? Just isn't. But do you think, Dave, is there any chance this might lead to Trump perhaps to be a little bit less liberal about America's gun laws and to be try to suggest perhaps more controls? Or is that just a foolish thing to suggest? How can he possibly say that we all need more guns after that?
But then how can you say that through all the atrocities that happened during his presidency? I mean, we saw, the sort of absolutely horrendous incidents, like we say, during the Black Lives Matter incident we saw with Kyle Rittenhouse. Sort of there were all kinds of arguments that could have been had for gun control during his time as president, although they didn't directly affect him or no one took shots at him. It seems difficult now for him to imagine him being the guy that decides to take a rollback on the basis of, sort of this particular incident, as horrendous as it is and as much as it should put this issue in the spotlight. It's so ingrained into him and into his support. I think this is a sort of base that he would very much not want to be taking on.
Yeah, he's not going to want to tackle that. I don't think he would perhaps be in a position to, but he'd have to be a nice and sane human being first to want to do it. I'm not sure that's where we are, unfortunately. So we'll have to see how that all pans out, I expect. But, time to hoard some tin food, everybody, because I think that's where we might be headed. Anyway, we have managed to, thank you for that, everyone. Thank you for taking part. Thank you, Dave, for taking us through some of that. So let's just fingers crossed, we've got the Republican National Convention, which is starting today. They don't officially have their nominee yet, but it's going to be Trump, isn't it? There's going to be some hoo-ha, and literally hoo-ha about Trump for the next few days. And then there's the Democrats are going to confirm their nominee. I think by the end of the month, they're going to do it virtually or online or something rather than at the convention in August due to some voting change. But there's going to be an awful lot of talk again about replacing Biden. And then who knows, to see how it all goes.